Hey, this is Michelle, and you're listening to Words with Michelle, the podcast, a show where I sit down and have conversations with influencers on a range of topics, anything from natural hair, employment, discrimination, food, relationships, and everything in between. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. If you want to send me an email, hit me up at michelle@wordsmichelle.com. Thanks for tuning into the latest episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. As you might remember, I launched my book at Word on the Street, and Word on the Street is a book festival in Toronto at the end of September. On that day, I met a bunch of people. I met readers, I met authors, I met bloggers, podcasters, I met a lot of people. But then I met this really bubbly young author who just seemed to radiate positivity and happiness. I felt that I had to get to know her. So on that day, she gave me her business card, so I found her online and started to follow her. I knew that she wrote a book, but I also liked everything that she posted. Her posts seemed to be so positive and reassuring and just radiated happiness. I thought that her message would be great to inspire and inform you. So I reached out to this bubbly author by the name of Kenisha Hanson, and she is the author of Peace Your Way to Success, which is a foundational guide to cultivate peace, to prioritize yourself, and to achieve your goals. But before we get into the show, I'd like you to know that this episode is sponsored by Epigram Consulting Services. If you're an entrepreneur or a micro-entrepreneur in need of leveling up your business, Epigram Consulting can walk you through while teaching you the process of starting or expanding a business with their unique business consulting model. Epigram specializes in product identification, business plans, financial analysis, operations, and marketing. Ready to start or fine-tune your business? Contact Karen at info@epigramconsulting.com. Now back to the show. I love the concept of Kenisha's book, because having peace, harmony, and balance are things that I strive for to have in my life. I love that Kenisha stresses that we need to prioritize our well-being and find fulfillment. Her book offers a roadmap to define their own success story and navigate life's inevitable challenges. So I spoke with Kenisha about a week ago, and she was the essence of positivity and bubbliness. But she also conveyed her message in such a reassuring tone. So I went out and bought her book. In this episode, you'll hear why Kenisha wrote the book, who can benefit from the book, and how she overcame personal health issues. So before we start the show, I asked Kenisha to introduce herself. So let's welcome Kenisha to the show. Thanks for being on the show, Kenisha. So can you just tell us a bit about yourself, or just introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. So I am Kenisha Hanson. I am the author of Peace Your Way to Success, a foundational guide to prioritize yourself, cultivate peace, and achieve your goals. So what that means is just really taking the time to live in alignment with the things that are important to you, and live in alignment with your values. Yeah. And then I'm also a personal development coach. I really fuse the personal as well as professional. So I like to say, develop personally, grow professionally, because really there is that interconnection there. And I also do wellness facilitation. So I really enjoy doing that, helping people with supportive tools, as well as reflection, right? I do definitely lead and guide a lot of reflection practices. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
That's amazing. When did you start doing the coaching? When did that happen?
The coaching happened, well, I got certified back maybe about almost what year are we in now? 2024, around in 2020. I started doing that. Prior to that, my background is in psychology. So that's kind of like the basis of my training. I have my master's in psychology, and I stumbled upon coaching and I was just like, wow, I love this. I want to learn more about it. Like, what is the difference between, coaching and like therapy, and just exploring that world has been been great. And I love coaching because coaching is very empowering by way of I'm not telling you what it is that you need to do, but I'm guiding you back to yourself in the sense where like I'm asking you the questions so that you come up with your own solutions, right? It's kind of like a co-collaborative experience. So yeah, I love coaching. That's kind of how I got started into it. And yeah.
Is that what you do on a full-time basis? Like, do you do coaching full
Uh,
time?
no, so I don't do coaching full time. Like full time, I do work for the government, but I am a part of a coaching consortium there, whereby we do coach executive coaches, executive leadership within the organization. So I do coaching as part of my role as well.
Interesting. Nice. Okay, so how did you come up with the title for your book? How did you come up?
Yeah, so that it's so funny, and you're an author too, so you know like the whole journey of it all. You're just like something about not compounding your misfortunes and all of these different types of things, but it was very big, and it wasn't quite there for me, and then I was just like, okay, what am I trying to convey? Like just stop for a second. What are you trying to convey, and like what are you trying to allow people to take away from that, or to take away from reading the book? And I was just like, peace. And I was just like, that's it, really? And then it's just like, okay, well, who is it that we're speaking to, right? We're talking to, the ambitious woman, the driven woman, the high achievers. Okay, and what do they associate? Like, what are they on a journey towards? And that's success. So it just kind of all worked with Piece Your Way to Success. Yeah, so that's kind of how it all happened. It was messy. It wasn't pretty, but we arrived as we always do, right?
Well, I mean, I like it. I mean, because we do want peace, we want balance, we want
Yeah.
harmony. So, I mean, I like that. So, getting back to your book, and all the coaching that you do, what does peace look like? So, what does that look like?
I think that is, a big question and an important question. And I think it's very subjective. I think the biggest thing for me in writing this book is you have to define what that looks like to you. And I think you have to define what peace looks like to you in various facets of your life. So in my book, I've structured it in a way where I talk about, your finances, your mental and spiritual well-being, your interconnections, which are your relationships, as well as your physical environment and your physical health. And we can talk about, well, pieces of, well, I get to go to the spa. Cool. Congratulations. Or I get to sit on top of a mountain, in lotus pose. But no, it's more than that. It can include those things, but it's like, what in each of your areas of your life, what does peace look like and feel like to you? And, when we're exploring the concept of peace, we think about, when was the last time you experienced it, right? What did it feel like? What were you doing? Who was around you? What did you have? What didn't you have? What was present? What was absent? All of those things. So it's really, my book is really an invitation for you to connect with yourself. At the end of each chapter, there are reflection questions. So you can answer these questions for yourself to really start unpacking what's important to you, and where peace shows up for you, and how peace shows up for you. And if you haven't experienced it yet, well, answering these questions will allow you to understand why.
Oh my God, I love that. I really like the way you phrased that because you didn't actually, not that you didn't give me a definitive answer, but I guess it looks different for everyone.
It does. It does. Because my piece is very different in how I structure my world around my piece. Like, peace is one of my values. So my world is very much structured around what that looks like for me. So I have to define, well, what does that look like for me by way of my finances, right? For some people, having, at least $500 in the bank, they're good. They're laughing. Ha ha, I love it here. For others, that's stress, right? So you have to have that. When I say you have to have that awareness, you have to know what that looks like for you. Maybe it's 10,000, right? Maybe it's just having better, um, modifying your relationship with money. And so in that first chapter, in that first section, I go into like, what's your money story? When was the last time you looked at, well, where did my money beliefs come from? Right? And are you at peace with your relationship with money? A lot of people aren't. A lot of people, money makes them a little bit uncomfortable. So let's delve into why. Let's delve into that story. So yeah. It looks different for everyone. So I don't like to, push what I consider peace on anybody. It's up to you, right? But I think the objective is understanding what that looks like to you and understanding what isn't for you, right?
That's great. Oh my God, I felt really good. Like that was some good information. So I guess I like the fact that, or tell me, what does your book focus on? So you said money. So what other facets? I know I
Yeah.
think, yeah, but just if you just wanted to.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, when we think about like from a psychological perspective, there's like, there's always these different ways that you can look at the facets of your life, and there's always different various elements. For me, I wanted it to be something that was clear for me to remember. So I use like for my inner peace, so that the F is for finances, right? The M is for mental and spiritual well-being. So that looks at, what's going on for you. How are you utilizing tools? Like what shows up for you in different situations? How does your spirituality kind of flow into that, right? For me, my mental and my spirituality are very connected. For some people, they put it in two separate boxes, but for me, they're connected. So that's how I've structured it. So exploring what that means to you. How does your spirituality show up in your world? How does it ground you? How does it not, right? What do you believe in, right? And really just taking those time to answer those questions. The next one is your interconnections. So that is your relationships, right? Who's in your life? What do those relationships look like? How are they serving you? How are they not? What do your boundaries look like? How are you with maintaining your boundaries? Right? All of those different types of questions that understand your relationships and how they're structured in your life, because and even like those familiar relationships, that's when things usually get a little sticky, those the family, your loved ones. What does that look like? Because sometimes we have all of these boundaries and we have all of these, these assertions with everyone else but our family, everyone else but our loved ones, right? Our partner. So what does that look like? What is that, what does that do for you internally? Right? Right? How are you showing up? And is that draining you? Right? Is that empowering you? So all of those different types of questions. And then the next we have our physical. So that could be your physical health, your physical environment. What does that look like? How are you nurturing your body? Right. And then when we talk about peace, I always talk about grace as well, right? Like, how do you lend yourself a bit of grace to navigate and be okay with fluctuation, to be okay with the ebbs and flows of life, right? When we talk about physical in your environment, what spaces are you showing up to? Are you happy in those spaces? You talked about my office space. What does your space around you look like? Because all of these things play into your mind, into your world, right? And all of these things are interconnected. People don't want to talk about money. They don't want to talk about money, but money is woven through everything. Our mental health and our spirituality is woven through everything, right? Everything is interconnected. So we can't really talk about one without talking about the other. Even your relationships. Look how your relationships show up in your success journey or lack thereof, right? So
Yeah.
it's all interconnected.
Wow, you're good. Wow. Yeah,
Thank
really.
you.
Okay, so what I want to ask, because everything you're saying like speaks to me, and I hope it's out there listening. No, it really, really does. Do you give tools? Like, so you're showing us, or you're saying, this happens because of that. Do you give us tools how to navigate that? Do you know what I mean?
So yeah, for sure. So my book, I actually detail, my cancer journey. So I was diagnosed with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma back in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah. So I talk about my cancer story. I talk about the things that I did, the tools that I used. But I also invite you to explore what might work for you. So as much as I give you the things that I use, maybe meditation's not your jam, right? Maybe, listening to music or sitting down in the shower is not for you, but what is for you? And it's an invitation to be like, okay, actually, that doesn't work, but this does. So it's an invitation for you to take the time to look at what might work in the context of your world, and also giving you the flexibility that, like, in different phases of your life, things may work and things may not. So again, when we talk about grace and we talk about, that flexibility, not all things are going to work all the time, but it's like equipping yourself with a toolkit so that you can be like, all right, this, you know what, today, this meditation thing, I can't, I just can't. I need to go. Maybe it's a meditative walk. Maybe it's just a walk with no music, just with yourself, wherever you need to go, whether it's in the woods, whether you don't have access to, the forest or whatever. Maybe you just walk. You just walk, and maybe you still keep your AirPods in, so it looks like no one can talk to you, right? So it looks like you're busy, and no one can interrupt you, but it's just you, and you're just taking your time. So I also, in the book, I also provide a resource guide. So if you want to dive in a little bit deeper into any of the things that I talk about, I have a resource guide. So you can kind of download, once you purchase the book, it's a downloadable resource guide. So we get into, different parts of the book where you can use different resources, right? So like this one, for example, is like career alignment, and different resources for that, evaluating your role. What do you want more of? What do you want less of? So there's different tools that you can use. But again, this is just a jumping off point. There can be so many other things, like as much as I have knowledge and experience and everything else. At the end of the day, you are the expert of your own journey, your own world, your own life. So I can only give you, what I have and share what I have. But then the rest is up to you at the end of the day. The rest is up to you and the work that you want to put in and the awareness that you have of what you need.
Okay, great. Let me just ask, so because we mentioned at the beginning of the show that you are like a coach. So what
Mhm.
do people come to you for? I mean, I know we spoke about your focus. What would be like an average? What do most people come for assistance or help with?
Yeah. So it's interesting because there's usually a common thread. So it's usually something like work related, right? In some capacity, whether it's career transition, whether it's, I want a new job or I'm looking at applying for a new role within my current organization. It's usually very like I said, that goal based, that professional based. But what the common thread is, usually it's really something about, like, it's usually a personal matter. It's usually something that's blocking you from believing that you can do this thing, or whether they're burnt out. So there's always symptoms, right? So you touched on perfectionism, right? And perfectionism is that common thread that I see with a majority of my clients. Again, when we're talking about high achieving, ambitious, high performing, all of those words, you see perfectionism just running right through it, right? And that need to be perfect. So it's just like, but we also have to understand, like, what is that serving us, right? Perfectionism does serve us, right? So we have to acknowledge that, because you have the accolades, you have people praising you, you have the achievements, you have all of these things. So it's serving a function. But we also have to look at what is it costing us, right? The burnout, the self-doubt, the people pleasing, the
Hmm.
erosion of boundaries, right? We're not showing up for ourselves because we are trying to make everything perfect for everyone else but ourselves.
Okay.
So yeah. So really it's a lot of it's almost like the thing that they're coming for is not usually it's not usually that massive. Like they definitely have the ability to, get the job, do the thing, whatever the case may be. But it's the thing at the core, right? It's the thing at the core. It's what's driving them. And then again, it's like asking them like what their values are. And sometimes I had a client that was, struggling with, whether she should, take a position or not take a position. And well, what are your values? Right? Everything will come back to, like, what are your values? Are you living in alignment with your values, or are you not living in alignment with your values? Coming back to that, coming back to self. But in order to know what your values are, you've got to come back to yourself to understand what it is you need, want, desire, what's working for you, what's not working for you.
Why did you start the book? Like, why did you write the book?
I think I had a lot of stuff happen in a short amount of time. Um, like I said, cancer. My mom was actually paralyzed a year prior to that. I was her full-time caregiver. Yeah, there was just a lot of things that were happening. And it was, well, I have a choice. I can lay down and I can cry about it, I can talk about it, or I can get through it. And I chose to get through it. And for me, and I'm a spiritual person, so it felt very much like almost like I was a fly on the wall watching all of this stuff happen. Like I would be, hooked up, the IV for my chemotherapy would be hooked up to me, and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I can't believe there's like an IV. Like, I can't believe I'm doing chemotherapy right now. Like, it was very much a surreal experience. Like, I was a fly on the wall watching all of these things happen, like just watching this scene, this scene, this scene, this scene. And I was like, there was this moment where I was just like, there's no way that this is for me. There's no way that one, this is for me, and two, that I'm not supposed to survive this. So it's like, what am I supposed to be sharing with people? What is someone else supposed to take from this experience? And so that's what kind of prompted me to write the book. And I was just like, I, and I'll say this, I never had any desire to be an author in my days. Like, I was not dreaming about being an author at any point. I can assure you of that. Sure, maybe from a research perspective, like research articles or whatever, like I'm an academic by nature, but it was never, yeah, on my list of things I got to do. So it felt very much spiritually like this was something that I was supposed to do. This was not something for you. This was not something that was supposed to take you out, keep you down, but this is a story that you're supposed to share, and someone somewhere is going to benefit from it.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. I didn't know all of that. I mean, I did know your cancer diagnosis 'cause I did see it on your Instagram. I did
Yeah.
not know about your mom. You are really strong to take
Yeah.
on all that. So, were you taking care of your mom? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
I'm only child for my mom. Yeah.
How did you do that? I mean, wow. How did you do that? Like, how are you not
Yeah.
only but strength, mentally, physically? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. I do. I will say this. The thing that got me through, the thing, and I will say that it is your mind. Like, oh, people say it and people want to, like, oh, people are tired of talking about mindset and da da da, whatever. Listen, I do not I can say that I do not think that I would be here right now if it was not for my mindset, if it was not for my perspective and my outlook. Right? Yes, there was days when I'm just like, I'm gonna just lay down because I
yeah.
can't. But ultimately, in terms of like how I view the world, and I'm just like, all right, well, this is another thing that I got to deal with. All right, well, let's go. And I also want to add that it's also not just extreme positivity, like everything's fine, I love it here. Like, no, it's not anything. For me at least, it's just almost like shifting, it's almost like embracing the reality, like this is what it is, but also detachment from all sorts of different meanings, right? And that's where we as humans struggle, is we attach all sorts of meanings to things and we get stuck on what we've told ourselves that this means. So what I mean by that is I had a cancer diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
I could snowball really quickly. I was stage 4. I'm like, well, this is end of days. I'm just gonna die and da 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 da. And well, what was my whole life for? And on all, and you just spiral and you're gone and you don't even know where you end up.
Yeah.
Right. But when you bring it back to the present, when you bring it back to this moment right now, yes, I have a cancer diagnosis. What my options are this, and this is what I have to do. Will I die? I hope not. But not getting stuck in the stories that we tell ourselves. And that was really what I needed to do. It was really my mindset and just framing it like, this is what it is. This is what I got to do. Go. This is what it is. This is what I got to do. Go. Mom needs this. Okay, cool. Do I have the strength right now? Not really. Who's around? Is there anybody around? Sometimes there wasn't. And I was just like, all right, let's just get it done. And and I had a therapist. And like, again, it's just like the it's very challenging to how do I say, equip yourself with tools while you're going through the challenge. It's easier and more effective if you have them already to use from. Because when you are in a state of chaos and trauma, you are going to default to what you know. You're just going to be like, I'm just going to spiral, because you were never working on anything prior. But if you've been the time where things are good and you've got, you're in a better space, if you're building your toolbox and giving yourself the supports that you need, then when it's showtime, right? When it's showtime, you have the things to pull from. And so that's what I had to kind of translate in the book, right? Because I had to sit down with myself and be like, what did I do? How did I do it? Right. And so when I take you through each portion, or you talk about, like, I had a financial advisor, I found myself a therapist and I had them available. I maintained healthy relationships and got rid of the ones that weren't working. So when you look at what you did, like, equipping yourself to the best of your abilities. So, yeah.
Wow, you're definitely a role model, but you really are someone that you are a role model though. You mean like you what you've overcome and what you're doing and still having a smile on your face. Just like you said. I mean, like sometimes not every day is positive, but just the fact that you're giving back and
Yeah.
sharing with others what you've learned and how they can be better.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank
I mean,
you.
thank you. I mean, I can't wait to read the book. I mean, like because we're all, I will say I'm a work in progress. I mean, like, we're not where we need to be. We're always working to be the better version of ourselves. So I can't wait to read your book. And I mean, and I can't wait to do the workbook too, because I know it is work, right? I mean, like,
Absolutely.
I need some work. Who can benefit from this book?
Big answer, everyone, because I think we can all use, we could all use peace in our life. And I think, like, just, and I think what's important here is, like, making the conditions, um, creating the appropriate conditions for peace to become apparent, right? Because I feel like we all have it, it's not in some faraway place, but we have to make choices. We have to make decisions. We have to show up for ourselves in a way so that it can be apparent. But I would say, like I said, in terms of who I work with predominantly, it is, professional women. That could be entrepreneurs, that could be corporate driven, highly successful, highly achieving. Yeah, all of those types of women. I get a lot of the type A personalities. Yeah, the perfectionists, the ones that are, like, doing amazing things, but somehow still not fulfilled, right? Still feeling like something's missing, still feeling like they're not enough. So yeah, all of those individuals and everyone else.
Let me ask this for someone who's listening and they don't know what showing up for themselves mean. How can you define showing up for yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think showing up for yourself means, I would say, connecting to yourself, right? In order for you to show up, you have to make a conscious decision to pause, a conscious decision to be like, in a space, and maybe in the simplest terms, we can say you're in an environment. Do you like it here? Right? Do you like it here? Does it feel good in your body? I think it's just bringing awareness to yourself, the things that you like, the things that you don't like, the things that you desire, the things that you're after, the things that aren't working for you, and making a conscious decision to live in alignment with the things that are for you, to live in alignment with your values. And I know that that's a tough one, because oftentimes when I sit down and talk to clients, they're not even really sure what their values are. So it's almost guaranteed that you won't be fulfilled, that you'll always feel misaligned because you're not living in alignment with anything. You're like, oh yeah, like, I'm not really sure. But yeah, that's why now you're a CEO and you're like, wow, why do I hate it here? Because it was never for you, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it was someone else's expectation of you, but it was never for you. So taking a little bit more time to listen to yourself, to pay attention to the things that come up in our body. Our body tells us so much, right? Our body, it's always talking to us. It's up to us to listen. So showing up for yourselves means, for me, making space for yourself, having that awareness, having time for yourself, right? and not continuing to put yourself at the bottom of the list. Oh, I'll worry, I'll get to, self-care later. Oh, I'll get to, going to the spa later, or I'll get to doing all of these things later, right? And it's being intentional about choosing you. I want to say, just give yourself grace in the journey, right? We're all doing this human experience thing for the first time. So we're not going to get it all right, and it's not going to be pretty. And sometimes we have to revisit things that we thought that we dealt with. So just give yourself grace during the process.
It was so great speaking with Kenisha and learning her story and finding how we can piece our way to success. Thanks for being on the show, Kenisha. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with us and to enlighten us on what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure being here. I loved it.
Thanks again for listening to the latest episode of Words with Michelle, the podcast. Just a reminder, you can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also listen to the show on my blog at wordswithmichelle.com. If you have any questions, or if you'd like to provide a comment or feedback, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me at michelle@wordswithmichelle.com. You can also email me if you're interested in sponsoring an episode. Thanks again for listening to the show, and until next time, bye.